Dragon SpaceX, just for awareness, they have a few more steps in their procedure, and they should be calling to us for seat rotation shortly.
Okay, copy that. Yep, we see them working on that, and just as a lead into that, we are ready for the seat rotation, so just let us know when you're ready to start.
We'll go.
We have the confirmation from the Dragon team talking to the astronauts that they are just about ready to send the seat rotation command. Again, the ground crew is verifying, making sure that none of the cargo that's packed in Dragon underneath the crew, nothing is in the way, nothing came loose. You're looking at one row of crew seating, but there is, as we've mentioned before, Dragon designed to carry up to 7, but on this flight, for example, much of the cargo that we're carrying is loaded in various areas down below where the astronauts are seated. So they're just verifying nothing's in the way so that when they send the rotation command, the seats will pivot without encumbrance.
Dragon SpaceX, we are initiating seat rotation.
Dragon copies, we're ready.
That call out from the Dragon Core up to the crew, letting them know that we are sending commands from the ground to rotate the seats, and you can see astronauts Doug Hurley, Bob Behnken rotating in their seat back to a more comfortable position to get in and out of the capsule.
Dragon SpaceX, seats are upright. Thanks for the valiant effort today, helping us test our scrub timeline, and we'll see you Saturday.
Yeah, we appreciate those words. Everybody did great today. It was a great practice, and we'll do it again on Saturday. Everybody stay safe, and we'll talk to you on the loops.
Likewise.
Well, Dan, we've heard it. They've got rotated. The hatch is open. The ground crew is going to work to get the astronauts out. The SpaceX Dragon team, like the SpaceX Falcon 9 team, is going to be coming off of console now as we turn it over to the folks on the pad. So while we didn't launch, it was a pretty good countdown and scrub sequence. So we've got that good lesson learned under our belt. We look forward to Saturday having even better results when we get close to T0.
That's right. Always great when we don't have any issues with the capsule or the rocket, which we didn't today. Just had to fight that weather. And we'll be doing the same on Saturday. We are looking at about a 50% probability of violation. That's about where we were today. We did see it was all just a matter of trying to line up correctly. And didn't make it today, but we're going to try again on Saturday.
Right, and it sounds like we were just about half an hour away from making the launch attempt today with weather, with 50% weather chance on Saturday. Hopefully we have a better day at T0 for liftoff.
But we're definitely going to all be back. Jesse, myself, and John I will be here in Hawthorne to take you along every step of the way. We hope everyone else tunes in also, because this is really going to be a monumental moment. We're now going to look towards Saturday for America once again launching U.S. astronauts on American rockets from American soil. With them getting out of the capsule, though, that's going to do it for us here at Hawthorne. We're going to send you back down to Florida for one last check-in with our teams there. So over to you, Marie, Lauren, Leland, if you're still sticking around, and we're going to be looking forward to Saturday.
All right, thanks a lot, Dan. Yeah, we're just all sitting here. We watched Bob Benkin just climb out of his seat. Looks like he is out of Crew Dragon now, and Doug Hurley following suit. No pun intended. There we see Bob in the foreground and Doug climbing out of Crew Dragon in the background. Pad closeout team looks like helping them out. So any minute they're going to be basically just reversing course, coming back the way from whence they came. Leland, I know you had a scrub years back.
Yeah, Marie, in 2008, we were having breakfast. I never scrubbed while I was in the vehicle, but we were having breakfast, and we got a call from the flight director saying that we had these engine cutoff sensors that were bad. 2 were bad, and the flight rules say that you should have to have 3 of 4 to fly. And so we all said we're not going to fly unless we have them. And I think we all need to know that the flight rules are there to protect, our astronauts and their families. And we got very close today. We sometimes get that launch fever that we want to go ahead and just try it anyway. But we have these rules for a reason, and it's really important to stick to the rules, even in the heat of battle, even with dignitaries here. It's just the way that we have to do it as operators.
It's also a good wet dress exercise. Went through, exercised all the systems nearly to T0, which is incredible. I believe this may have been the first time Bob and Doug are sitting on top of in our vehicle with a fueled rocket. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Closing the hatch, exercising the environmental life support systems, doing that flight leak check. I mean, all of this is a ton of learning that came out of here, even if we didn't ultimately go to space today.
Absolutely. So we're getting a cool view that we wouldn't have seen if they'd launched. They're making their way back down the crew access arm. And they are going to be turning the corner there, heading to the stairs that are going to take them down to the elevator.
Passing the worm.
Passing the worm. So, yep, they're heading down the stairs now. It's going to take them down to the 255-foot level, and then they're going to be getting in the elevator, take them down to the ground level. And we'll do it again on Saturday.
It's actually very reassuring that all systems were go. There was no problems with the vehicle at all, as you said, and it was just some weather. And I think if we have that same performance on Saturday, and the weather gods give us some good juju there, we'll be good to go.
Yes, please. I mean, we were so close today. It hurt my heart. If we had 10 more minutes, it sounded like we probably would have made it, but just was not to be today. And of course, we're going to always do what is the safest thing for the crew. And as they head into the elevator there, we do want to go over to Operations and Support Building 2 now, where the NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine is standing by. He would like to provide his own thoughts now. We'll go to him.
Well, thank you, Marie. I know there's a lot of disappointment today. The weather got us. But I also want to say it was a great day for NASA. It was a great day for SpaceX. I think our teams worked together in a really impressive way, making good decisions all along. So here in this particular case, we had just simply too much electricity in the atmosphere. There wasn't really a lightning storm or anything like that, but there was a concern that if we did launch, it could actually trigger lightning. And so we made the right decision. We had the parameters set ahead of time. The teams worked together. And in the end, the right decision was made. I will tell you, I've done a lot of interviews over the last 2 days. And in those interviews, I get asked over and over again, is there undue pressure here? People say to me, with all of the attention of the world on this launch, with all of the VIPs coming, are you going to feel pressure on this launch? And I will tell you, as I've told our teams, under no circumstances should anybody feel pressure. If we are not ready to go, we simply do not go. And I will tell you, I am proud, so proud of our teams working together to make the right decision in this particular case. We have a lot to look forward to. In just a few short days, on Saturday afternoon, we're going to do it again. Here's what we know. We are going to launch American astronauts on American rockets from American soil. We're going to do that. We're very close. I also want to say that this was an important milestone just today. We did a wet dress rehearsal. We haven't done a wet dress rehearsal with our astronauts full gear before. We've done a dry dress rehearsal. Now we've done a wet dress. So we learn a lot every time we do these things. This is no different. And we get a lot of great data from doing what we just did. So today was a good day for NASA. It was a good day for SpaceX. And we've got a lot to look forward to. So I want to say congratulations to both of the teams. And let's go get this done. I know we're up for it. Saturday is going to be a great day. And here we go again. So thank you to everybody for all the great work. Marie, back to you.
All right, thank you so much. Those were some great insights from Jim Bridenstine, the NASA administrator. The crew's making their way back to astronaut crew quarters, where they're going to remain in quarantine until Saturday. They've been in quarantine for 2 weeks, and there they will stay to keep them safe and healthy for our next launch attempt. Again, we had to stand down from launch today because of unfavorable weather conditions around Launch Complex 39A, but we're going to be ready to do this again Saturday, May 30th. The new launch time will be 3:22 p.m. And our coverage will begin live here on NASA TV at 11 o'clock in the morning Eastern Time, Saturday. So be sure to tune back in on NASA television and nasa.gov/live if you're watching along online. And we will be back here to take you through it every step of the way. Thanks for sticking with us, and we will see you back here Saturday.
At about T-minus 20, and more information there on whether we would be able to continue into the prop load or scrub at that time.
Okay, Jay, thanks for the update. We appreciate it.
Copy. So I'll give you some more words in about 6 minutes.
Okay, so it sounds like we're going to
Dragon
find
Captain.
out in about 6 minutes if we're going to have enough time. And John, I was referring to a couple of those weather situations where we have to have a certain amount of time. In this case, with the field mills, about 15 minutes. So they have until about 16 minutes and 30 seconds to really make sure that we're going to have enough time for that to dissipate. So we're going to be listening for that weather update in just a couple of minutes, but it is going to be a pretty interesting trip uphill for them once they actually get on orbit.
And a very exciting countdown with 6 minutes to figure out if we are launching today. But targeting back to what we were talking about, next, Dragon will make its approach and actually dock with the space station. This is a very different process from what we've seen with Dragon cargo deliveries in the past, which used a process called berthing. Now, berthing requires a spacecraft to approach the station and then stop so a crew member can maneuver the station's robotic arm to capture the spacecraft. Docking on this version of Dragon can be done autonomously.
Stage 2 cryo-helium load started.
Autonomously with no crew aboard the station. It's typically a faster process, both when arriving and leaving, but it does still require pinpoint accuracy to approach safely.
Once captured, a spacecraft then gets attached to a common berthing mechanism. It's the same type of port that we use to connect each of the modules together on board station. It's a little bit slower process than docking, but the hatches are significantly larger than docking ports, which makes them perfect for bringing up large cargo items.
Dragon will spend up to 120 days docked before preparing to return home. Following successful completion of Dragon's test objectives and cargo loading operations, the crew will close out the cabin, perform final system checks, and configure the vehicle for undocking. Once the automated undocking sequence is complete, Dragon will complete 2 departure burns using its Draco engines, pushing it away from the space station.
And then after Dragon departs the station, it's ready for its trip home. And that'll have deorbit entry and landing and a number of other operations. If you're looking at this animation, it might look like we're playing the one we played originally in reverse, because that's kind of how it goes, but just a little bit quicker. All of the operations following the final departure maneuver will include things like trunk separation, closing that nose cone again, executing a deorbit burn, and once they're inside the atmosphere, deploying drogue and then main parachutes, and then finally splashing down off the Florida coast, at which teams will move in, get Bob and Doug up out of the water, and get them out of the capsule once they're on the boat. So we have 4 minutes now until we get that next expected weather update. Let's go down now to the team at Kennedy. Murray?
All right, thanks, Dan. If you're just joining us, we are now T-minus 23 minutes and 48 seconds from the first launch of astronauts to the International Space Station from U.S. soil in 9 years. We're going to find out in less than 4 minutes if the weather looks good for that. And this will mark the beginning of a new era where more people will be able to fly to space than ever before. In fact, we took a poll a little bit earlier to ask you if you had the opportunity to fly to space, would you go? And 86% of those of you watching answered that you would go to space.
That's an incredible number. I think, realizing that you don't have to be a military astronaut or a NASA astronaut to fly in space. You can be a regular just a regular person going off to space on a SpaceX type rocket. So I think that's why the numbers are so high.
Yeah, and we are really thrilled to see all the folks watching along online. I know we certainly hope that that this is a go, but we're going to hear a little bit of a weather update in less than 3 minutes now. And Leland, I know they're waiting for a weather update, and they've come, almost all the way down the count. What do you think Bob and Doug are thinking about right now?
We on SES 129, we were having some weather problems, and I think we were getting close to the countdown, and then it seemed like the sky just cleared up right above our heads. We saw it, and we knew where we were going. And we always know that you can have any types of delays, fuel prop delays, all kinds of things that can happen, but we've trained over and over and over again for these types of scenarios. And so we want to be safe. We want to be safe for our families, and we'll do this another day if it doesn't work with the weather.
I love that John I always says weather. It's that thing that everybody talks about, but no one can do anything about it.
I know.
And it is this interesting thing of just, succumbing to Mother Earth. She's going to tell us if we can go or not today.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if it happens, look at it this way. Bob and Doug got one really great rehearsal in, right?
It's always best to practice and practice and practice, yes.
So again, we're less than 2 minutes now from that weather update that is going to go directly to Bob and Doug, and we will quiet down so we can listen in for that, because I know we can't wait to find out what that is. And those of you watching that have been following along, we are eagerly awaiting to hear whether the weather is going to be a showstopper today.
These clouds can seem really deceiving at times, right? You see the blue skies peeking through and you think everything's fine, but you just don't know. That's why we have those launch weather officers.
Absolutely. And I know, we've talked about it before, but it's not just the weather in Florida that they're looking at. They've got to look at weather downrange. If they were to have an abort in flight and they needed to come down somewhere in the ocean, they need to consider what the weather's like out there, because recovery teams have to go out and get them in a situation like that. So there's so many variables, and that's why not just with this flight, but with every human space flight we've had in the past, there's always a very good chance of a scrub, because you do have so much criteria that you have to meet. And we're going to listen in now. We're just seconds away from a weather update.
Stage 2, RP1 load complete.
That is liquid oxygen you see venting off the rocket. That's completely normal and expected. We're standing by for a weather update.
Unless you can give us another 10 minutes, I don't think we're going to get there with any of the rules today.
I'm going to give you 10 minutes.
I mean, another 10 minutes past T0.
Oh,
1645 local, I think we'll probably be clear on all the rules, but not quite going to make it for this.
Okay. We're going to check back in with you in about 2 minutes, and then I'll call it up at about T-minus 17 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, there's some of them are starting to count down, but we still have one above 2,000. So if that gets below,
right there, that was the weather net going out, but we're still standing by for a final decision. And we're going to continue to listen in for an update, but in the meantime, we're going to go over to John Innsbrucker at SpaceX headquarters in California. John?
And Dragon SpaceX on weather, we're still not
T-minus
looking,
18
good
minutes
currently.
and counting.
LD is
We are still red
having some
on weather.
discussions. Expect an update from LD.
We're waiting in about
in a
another
few
minute
minutes.
for one final check with weather. We're going to check at
Okay,
T-minus
go ahead and
17
copy.
minutes possibly. We don't really expect that things will have improved. The weather officer was not optimistic that the weather would clear up that rapidly. We did hear the launch director, Mike Taylor, joke that, if we could move 10 more minutes past the T0, weather conditions may improve, but Mike was not able to do that. We have an instantaneous window today. So at 17 minutes, we want to make that call, because shortly after that, we will begin loading liquid oxygen onto the second stage. So if we're not going to have the opportunity to launch, if the clock's going to run out, stand by.
Continue to violate a couple different weather rules that we now do not expect to clear in time to allow for a launch today. We go ahead and end today's launch attempt. Launch control would end the launch auto sequence and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence, please. Launch abort has started.
And Dragon SpaceX, unfortunately, we are not going to launch today. You are go for 5.100 launch scrub.
5.100. It was a good effort by the teams, and we understand, and we'll meet you there.
Copy all.
We've heard the call from the crew. They have been informed. Launch Director Mike Taylor has called a scrub for the day, and we got the feedback when the Dragon team informed Bob and Doug. They said we gave it a good try, but they understand, and we are here to try another day. So right now we did officially hold the clock. It looks like at T-minus 16 minutes, 54 seconds. The launch automatic sequence that controls the
In the SpaceX and operational controls, we actually were meeting our 1 and 270 requirement and it's not just a mission, it's an overall certification requirement. So, with all the work that we've been doing with SpaceX on the modeling, on the different aspects of their design, and obviously MMOD mitigation and inspection, that requirement was closed out acceptably.
And our next question is from Tim Fernholz at Quartz. Tim?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for doing this, and good luck. Two questions, if I might. One for Steve. I'm just curious, for those of us who haven't participated in a flight readiness review, can you give us like a tangible example of, the kind of back and forth that might happen in that room? And, does it get down to the engineers on a specific subcomponent area, or is it at a more high level? And for Benji, I'm just curious. I know it's hard to put an exact number on this, but can you talk about how SpaceX has invested in developing the Crew Dragon alongside taxpayers? Thank you all.
So, a big part of a flight readiness review is reviewing and accepting the risks. Whenever we fly, there are going to be residual risks. Kathy and Benji and their team did a great job along the way in these many years of identifying risks, understanding them, mitigating them through design changes and operational controls, to the point where we were able to accept a lot of them, most of them, along the way. So an example of one that the team has been working on over the last 6 months or so were the Dragon parachutes. So we established a little while ago that the original chute designs did not have adequate margin based on some knowledge we had gained through testing about how the chutes deploy and the loading on the chutes. So SpaceX stepped up and did a new chute design, and we had to qualify that new chute design to higher margins than we had the previous chutes. The NASA SpaceX team did an amazing job laying out a test program and executing that test program. However, it's fewer tests than we normally would see on a parachute qualification program. So we took a long time and a couple of presentations during the review to have the team walk us through the design, the changes, the qualification testing, and the margins on the chute to make sure that everybody was good with how those chutes were qualified. And we had very high confidence that they will function as we need them to when Bob and Doug return from the International Space Station.
And our next question is from Eric Berger, Ars Technica. Eric.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for doing this. I guess the question maybe for Kathy, it's been a little more than a year ago when there was the accident, when they were testing the Super Drago thrusters, and it was a pretty visceral image of what happened on the pad there, and at the test pad. And I'm just wondering, did you think we would get here a year later to where we're ready to launch Crew now after that accident?
Well, I've been doing this for a really long time. I told somebody I feel like an old lady now after kind of working vehicle development now for 14 years, and don't ever underestimate the value of a failure, right? I've learned that when I look at, over my career, when we've made the biggest progress, it's been in learning from a failure and then using that as a step function to move you to the next level. So, but you also should never underestimate how much work it is for you to overcome it, right? So we always had a plan. We had a plan that we were trying to fly, potentially by the end of December, but we weren't going to fly until we're ready, until we worked through all the testing and everything we needed. So I look back on last April, and the static fire was really for us to get ready for our in-flight abort test that was supposed to happen in June. And I think that was a real blessing for us. We learned a ton about our system and have made a spacecraft and expanded the knowledge of materials in NTO systems to an extent that give us a real sustained understanding of our systems and further robustness of the new design that we have. So last April, I probably wasn't thinking I was going to be flying in a year, but you know what? You can never sell this NASA and SpaceX team short, and they've always accomplished miracles for me, and I'm very, very proud of them right now.
Thank you, Kathy. And I think I skipped over one question for Benji about how SpaceX has contributed. Benji, do you want to answer that question from Tim Fernholz?
Great, sure, absolutely. So I can't, give you the exact dollar amount. There's, proprietary and competitive reasons why we can't. But I can tell you absolutely that SpaceX has invested heavily into this partnership and into the development of, Dragon and Falcon. If you go all the way back to the days when, we were developing our Falcon 1 vehicle, that's the fundamental systems and processes, and even a lot of the development of the engineers and team that created Falcon 1 are still working on the program today. And then you fast forward and you look at the development of Falcon 9 and Dragon, again in partnership with NASA under the COTS program and the cargo programs, and then continuing through now to the Crew Dragon. The partnership is definitely a two-way street, and we've put a lot of time and energy and finance into that effort to ensure that we're ready to fly, as we will be in 5 days. A lot of what you should look at is you see the workforce that we've developed, you see the technologies that we've developed to ensure that we're ready to fly. Another element I think it's important to pay attention to is kind of the I won't say pioneering because we weren't the first to do firm fixed price contracting, but I think it's we've been champions is a good word of firm fixed price contracting from the beginning. Fundamentally, this is about saying to the taxpayer, hey, there's something you want us to do. Here's how much we're going to charge for it, and we're going to go do it for that amount of money. And that's in some ways, I think it used to be a pretty revolutionary concept, and I think we've shown that is a very effective tool for getting the best value to the government, to NASA, and to the American taxpayer. And as is recently reported, estimated that this program overall will have saved NASA, maybe $30 to $40 billion at least. And that's a significant thing to think about and see how we continue. Again, those firm fixed price contracts and the kind of partnership and truly open partnership where we work together allows that kind of savings to happen and that kind of ability for NASA to invest in more things and do other programs.
Our next question is from Lauren Grush at The Verge. Lauren?
Hi, thanks for doing this. I was wondering if you could go through all the possible abort scenarios for this flight. At which points are the aborts available, and how does that put constraints on when you can launch, notably whether, how big of an area do you need to consider on launch day? Thanks.
Sure. I'll talk a little about that, and then Norm, if you wanted to add anything to it as well. But I think that the number one of the key requirements of this program is to have an abort system, and we want to develop our vehicle to have this integrated abort system, what we call the launch escape system. Those are the Super Dracos on the vehicle, the Super Draco engines, and it's a very effective system that we hope we never ever have to use. It's sort of like the airbags in your car or the ejection seat in a jet plane. You put a lot into it, you test it, and you make sure it's going to work, and then you hope you never ever have to use it. In 2015, we did our pad abort test to demonstrate that we could escape from the pad and into the water, come down safely into the water with the astronauts. And then again in January of this year, we did the in-flight abort test, launched on a Falcon 9, and initiated the launch escape system mid-flight in some of the roughest moments of the launch, and demonstrated again that launch escape system can bring the vehicle down and bring the crew home safely to the water and then be able to be recovered. You asked the question about when is it available. It's really available almost the entire time. One of the goals of this system is to not have any blackout periods where you really can't, where that system doesn't function. And that's a big step in the history, the evolution of using these systems. And a good example of that, a little while back, on one of the Soyuz launches, they needed to use the launch escape system, and it worked great. And that was, but the part of flight where they needed to use it was actually something that they had been expanding into. So over time, they had continued to improve that system in the same way that we've been charged to do the same thing on our system to ensure that you can cover all of the path of flight. You asked about weather and what we might look for, and that's a really important point. And I didn't mention it earlier, but I think it's important to talk about weather on coming up here for launch day. It looks really nice outside today, but we're always monitoring a lot of things, and it does have very much to do with the launch abort system on Dragon 2. So when we're normally flying a Falcon mission, say with a satellite fairing mission, we're monitoring a lot of different things. We're looking at ground winds, we're looking at lightning, we're looking at upper atmosphere winds along the ascent trajectory. But it's focused particularly on the Falcon, and we'll be looking at all of those and the same kind of thresholds to call off the launch. For Falcon, we'll do that the same for the crew missions. But now we need to add into that all of the weather along the entire ascent track where we might need to escape the crew, abort the crew off of Falcon. And it's really there's 50 points. Where we're monitoring weather, over 50 points actually, where we're monitoring weather all the way along the ascent track, which means from here in Florida all the way up the eastern seaboard of North America, United States and Canada, and all the way over basically to Ireland across the northern Atlantic. We'll be monitoring that weather, and along that way we're monitoring a lot of the same things. We're looking at winds, we're looking at lightning, we're looking at precipitation, and we're actually looking at waves. We're looking at wave velocity and wave height. Because we need to make sure that if the crew had to come down in a launch escape scenario, that they would come down in a sea state that would keep them safe and that the rescue forces would be able to come and get them. Again, we hope we never have to use that, but we're monitoring all of those parameters as we go along, and we don't launch until we know that we're ready.
And our next question is from Leo Enright at Irish TV. All right, and it looks like we lost that connection, so we'll go to Irene Klotz at Aviation Week. Irene?
Thanks, Josh. My question's for Benji Reed. Given what you've learned working with NASA on commercial crew for all these years, how much faster do you think SpaceX can get to crew flight with Starship?
So that's a great question. Although I have to say that our focus today, of course, is on Demo 2. And my focus particularly has been on the commercial crew program. Super excited as we develop Starship and develop that in partnership with NASA in the contracts that we're already working, the programs are already working with them. Again, it's a process. And I would say, though, that just looking at the development of the NASA SpaceX partnership from the cargo days, now through the crew days, having worked together and understood each other and influenced each other, we've learned a lot from NASA and we've taken a lot from them, and I think we've given back, and I think NASA has grown and changed in ways that are valuable and productive for them as well. And I think that every time you do this together, it's going to get better. We'll get more efficient and do better. And I was just chatting with the director of Marshall's Center, and talking about some of the new programs we'll be working on with them there too for Starship. And we're excited. We're excited to continue that partnership and make it work better and more efficient, and always safer and more reliable.
And our next question is from Mike Wall, space.com. Mike?
Thank you all. This is a question about kind of what the next steps are going forward, between now and actually launch day. I'm just mostly curious about like what do you need to kind of tick off on, like during the review this like coming Monday that you guys didn't talk about during the flight readiness review? So that's probably for, if I guess Benji, what's Monday's review going to look like, and how it's going to be different from what's already been discussed?
Launch readiness review is ultimately the final check to make sure that everything that was open, any open issues or concerns, that those have been answered. Anything new that we may have discovered, again, has been closed and answered. But particularly, it's really an assessment of the data, right? We'll have done our static fire that we're doing here shortly this afternoon. We'll have done our our dry dress rehearsal with the crew. And that's a ton of data. Really, really important that all of our engineers, and they're all on deck and ready to go right now. And for the next few days through the weekend, they will be analyzing and looking at all the data and all the observations that are made. And launch readiness review is to go again across all of the teams and every person and say, are you ready? What did you learn? What came out of the data? Are we ready to go?
And our next question is from Emory Kelly, Florida Today. Emory?
Hey, folks, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. Administrator Bridenstine mentioned, over the course of the past 2 days, folks could speak up if they had any questions, and I know you mentioned the discussion between the Russians and the issue resolved between Demo 1 and Demo 2, and I know you discussed parachutes. I'm curious if there was anything else that came up yesterday and today that maybe led to some longer discussions that sticks out? Thank you.
Yeah, so the other two kind of technical special topics we had was the NTO titanium compatibility issue that was discovered during the Dragon hot fire test back in April. Also a tremendous amount of work done by the NASA SpaceX team to understand that and to figure out how to mitigate and control that hazard. And a lot of questions to just understand where we were and make sure that we were ready to accept that risk, the residual risk there for the Demo 2 flight, which we are. Again, I cannot tell you the amount of testing that was done by the White Sands test facility team and the SpaceX team in McGregor, particularly the SpaceX team in McGregor, over the past few weeks. This has done a tremendous amount of testing, and that testing gives us confidence that we have a system that's going to perform, and we'll have that abort capability that Benji was discussing earlier. Another one was a more late-breaking issue, late-breaking within the next month or so, not days, but late, on performance shortfall of the fire suppression system. So the team, it's a system that suppresses any fire underneath any equipment or anything on the floor of Dragon, underneath the floor of Dragon. And so the team, again, analyzed both the hazards there as well as the ability of the system to suppress a fire. We've deemed the risk to be very low there. And so we were able to review that data and that great work done by the team and accept that risk. So a couple examples of technical issues that had been closed out before the review, but were reviewed by the board. Lots of questions, lots of back and forth. And in the end, we agreed with the program with them closing those issues, and we were ready to proceed.
And our next question is from Jeff Faust at Space News. Jeff?
Yeah, good afternoon. Actually, just to sort of follow up on the previous question, there's discussion that there's still some open work left to do to tie up loose ends before the launch. Can you give some examples of some of that open work that still has to be done between now and presumably the launch readiness review on Monday? Thanks.
So I think, we mentioned the open work. There's final checkouts on the spacecraft that happen, prior to final hatch closure. That's normal, standard work. We already mentioned the big event. The big event, obviously, static fire today, making sure the launch vehicle, final checkouts on the vehicles are done. going through and doing dry dress. I mean, like we already talked about, dry dress and making sure that whole system for delivery of the crew to the pad, working through all those pieces, making sure everything's working, days before the launch. That's all normal open work. And then doing the job of going through all the data out of the tests. We'll be working, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday up to launch day to make sure that we're still checking everything out. I talked a couple weeks ago about continuing to dot the I's and cross the T's, and that's the kind of open work we're talking about right now.
And our next question is from Dave Mosier at Business Insider. Dave? And our next question will actually be from Jackie Goddard with the Irish Times of London. Jackie?
The Times, yes. Hello, thank you. My question, I think, is for Kirk. Earlier this week, there was a report from Sputnik, the Russian government news agency, that quoted Roscosmos officials saying that they were monitoring increased benzene levels inside the space station. They stressed there was no threat to crew and that the concentrations didn't exceed the exposure limit. But can you tell us what that's all about? Was there any focus of conversation at the review? And does it raise any potential for concern with sending 2 additional crew up? Thank you.
Well, what's going on in the Russian government, I'm not the right person to ask. I think Roscosmos would be the right group to ask. I can tell you that we work very closely with our Russian partners. I speak to them, if not daily, certainly weekly. We actually have some people in my organization who live in Moscow, and so we're very, very close, great partners. There has been no discussion about any immediate change in the work that they're doing. Certainly no increased risk to the crew today as a result of any of this. So I'm not concerned at all about that. I think maybe what they're referring to might be longer-term decisions that the Russian government and the Russian Space Agency could make, but that would really be a question for them. So the Russian crew, I actually spoke with Ivan and Anatoly on orbit this week, and they're very excited about having 2 more crew members come up there. The ISS is in great shape. The crew on orbit's in great shape. I know the crew here on the ground, you guys just talked with them, they're in great shape. So I think the vehicle on orbit's ready to go, and we're working to make the vehicle here on the ground ready to go.
Great. And our next question is from Antonia Amarillo with Florida Today.
Yes, hi. Thanks for taking my question. I was wondering, why does it take Crew Dragon 19 hours to reach the International Space Station when it only takes Soyuz 6 hours? And can Crew Dragon, get there to the space station quicker? And if so, why hasn't SpaceX and NASA decided to do that? Thanks.
You bet. Absolutely. I mean, it's about orbital mechanics. It's about when you launch, right? There's phasing that you have to do to get to the space station, and so you look at the different launch opportunities again based on weather and a whole number of other factors, and you determine when's the best time to launch, and so you set up a number of launch opportunities, days and times, and some of those launch opportunities require more phasing time, and some of them require less. And so on the 27th, it's about a 19-hour phasing, but then on other days it would be less, other days it could be more. So it really just depends on the launch. It's the orbit of space station and the time of day and time of year that determines that length of time.
I will just add one more thing. This is a test flight. We talk about this launch, but this is a test flight, right? And so we could have picked different launch days that had different phasing opportunities, right? But there's also checkouts that we're doing along the way. So we kind of picked a day that would also, a phasing opportunity that would give us the time to be able to do those checkouts along the way, because this is a critical test flight. Bob and Doug are going to get to test fly the vehicle and check it out and make sure that first time people are going to be in a SpaceX vehicle and get to kind of take it out for a test run there and make sure that before it's certified that the design is working. So this is a really, really important flight for us. We got 2 great test pilots in there, and they're going to be checking out the vehicle.
And if I could add one more thing, the Soyuz was designed in the 70s, started flying in the 80s, and the norm has been 34 orbits, or really 2 days for the Soyuz to get to International Space Station. It's only been in the last three and a half years that they started going to, instead of 2 days, to get to 6 hours. And so I'm counting on SpaceX to accelerate the time in the next 20 years. So,
I'll say Kathy makes a really good point. One of the cool things and we're going to work on that, Kirk. And I hope it's a lot sooner than 20 years. Is Bob and I are going to get a chance to try sleeping on Dragon, and that's a really good point. And another thing about the crew is that they have taken to heart as test pilots the importance of their work to ensure the readiness of the vehicle and the system and the program for future crews. To them, in their mind, was always, is this the right, safe, reliable system for anybody to fly in, but also to make sure that their colleagues in the crew office would be able to continue to do exactly what they want to do. So they're testing it out not just for themselves, but for all future flights. And that's exactly right. It's one of the reasons we want to make sure they got to sleep on board. They got to eat meals and do all that kind of cool stuff while they're on board Dragon, yet trying to get them to station as quickly and safely as possible.
And our next question is from Jackie Waddles at CNN. Jackie?
Hey, folks. Thanks so much for doing this. My question is for Steve. So with Doug Lavero leaving the HEO this week, Steve, I know you took over Doug's role in this review, and I was curious if you had to do any additional preparation to assume that role, and if that last-minute change created any challenges over the past couple of days.
Yeah, actually, I've been conducting agency-level reviews of the Commercial Crew Program for the last 2 years as the Associate Administrator, as part of my chairmanship of the Agency Program Management Council. So every 2 to 3 months, Kathy has come in and briefed agency leadership, including myself, on the program, all the issues and challenges, the resolution of them, or paths to resolution. So those reviews, prepared me really well to step in and chair the Flight Readiness Review, as well as, I think, quarterly, the Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel reviews the Commercial Program, and Kathy makes a presentation to them. I think I've sat in on all or most of those reviews also. So given all that, I was well prepared. I also want to stress that there was a series of really great reviews leading up to the Flight Readiness Review. It wasn't just this one review. So there are engineering reviews of each system on Dragon and on Falcon by the engineering teams. They were a little concerned about doing those virtually versus face-to-face, given COVID-19, but the feedback I got was that those reviews were very effective. Then there was the Station Operations Readiness Review by Kirk. Very good, successful review. There was a Flight Readiness Review by SpaceX, led for their purposes. There was a Flight Test Readiness Review, led by Kathy and the team, and that led up to the Flight Readiness Review. So I sat in also on some of those reviews. So I felt very, very prepared to chair the review. And so don't think there are any significant challenges in transitioning from Doug to myself and chairing the FRR.
And our next question is from Marcia Dunn, Associated Press. Marcia?
Yes, hello. I'd like both SpaceX and NASA to address this. All space flight is risky, but this is a true test flight. And I'd like to, a big picture from you on just how risky, how dangerous this mission is that Bob and Doug are about to embark on. I'm not looking for statistics or numbers, but just in your guts, what are you feeling about the dangers and the risks of this whole endeavor? Thank you.
Well, there's lots of people that are NASA and SpaceX. Well, Marcia, it's really hard as a program manager because my job is to buy down risk, right? And for the last, with Steve laid out, I mean, really for the last 5 years as program manager, that's what I feel like I've been doing. So right now, we are trying to identify any risks that we know of that's out there and continue to look at risks and buy them down. But we also can't fool ourselves. You know, human space flight is really, really tough. You know, it's why we continue to look for risks and do additional assessments, and we never feel comfortable because that's when you're not searching, right? So I think, you know, we talked today about staying hungry, and so we're going to stay hungry, and we're going to stay hungry till Bob and Doug come home. But I've thought of every single risk. We've been sitting here scouring, our teams are scouring and thinking of every single risk that's out there, and we've worked our butt off to buy down the ones we know of, and we'll continue to look and continue to buy them down till we bring them home.
Kathy said it very, very well, and you know, it is tough. Spaceflight is hard, but because of that, we search ourselves and search our souls. We encourage each other, you know, in our partnership with NASA and SpaceX, but certainly within our company, we encourage everybody to look over each other's shoulders. We say, you know, challenge each other all the time. Don't take offense when people challenge your work. We encourage it. We are in the kind of the period right now of the final preparations for flight, but also where the majority of, you know, the engineers and people in the factory and everybody who've been working on this all of these years, they're now kind of into a period where they're doing their triple checks and quadruple checks. They're looking under every stone and turning over every rock just to make sure that we're really ready to go. And we have a standing policy in the company that anybody can raise an issue. Anybody can raise a risk. We have systems in place that actually allow anybody in the company to open a risk, what we call risk tickets, to open up an issue, to say, okay, I'm worried about something. And they have a direct line to, you know, senior leadership to say, hey, I'm worried about this up to the moment of launch. Bottom line is it's tough, but we won't launch until we're ready. And we will listen to the data and we'll listen to the people.
And our final question will be from Joey Roulette at Reuters. Joey?
Hey, thanks so much for doing this. This is for Kirk Shireman or anyone else. Kirk, you mentioned the role international partners played. I was wondering if you could give some examples of the response and any concerns raised by those international partners, specifically Roscosmos, in regard to this review. And then for Benji Reed, will any data from this mission inform Starship design or Starship missions in the future? And would Starship ever do any test flights like this one to the space station? Thanks.
From an international partner standpoint, it's really interesting. One is we're a partnership, and we expect all our partners, astronauts and cosmonauts, to fly on these vehicles, on the SpaceX vehicle. So they have a very vested interest. In this particular test flight, there are no international partners. But the very next flight, there will be. And so all the international partners were participating along the way because they know that their crew members will be flying on this vehicle, number one. Number two is it's docking to the International Space Station, and all those countries have made huge investments in that vehicle. We want to make sure that we're not risking the investment in that vehicle up there, or, by the way, their crew members who are living on board the International Space Station. So all along, very, very interested. The difficulties here, one, of course, I talked a little bit about time zones. That's always a difficulty. But we also had export control. So when we develop a vehicle here in the United States, all that technology is not allowed to be exported from the United States. So we have to live within those laws. And finally, there's proprietary data. So if the data was allowed to be exported, but it was SpaceX proprietary, then we would have to redact that data. So we conducted these discussions with our international partners along the way, answered their questions, assured them that their crew members would be safe, all the while meeting the U.S. laws on export control and honoring the proprietary data from SpaceX. So the fact that we did that, and all the partners were part of this review, were part of all this work, and we're ready to proceed is really really an amazing thing. So we're very, very happy about that aspect. Benji?
Sure. And just kind of following up real quick first on what Kirk said, it's exciting for us to get to work with international partners as well. We've had that opportunity on the cargo program from the early days because, again, they jointly run the space station and are partners in that. So coming up and bringing cargo, we had to work with them. And getting to work with the partners and work with all kinds of people around the world is exactly what we want to do. We want to send all kinds of people to space. And ultimately, this mission coming up and everything we're doing is to open that new chapter in the space age. And ultimately make life multiplanetary. That's what we want to do, and it's exciting to do it and see after this mission, what more missions we'll be doing with the space station and with others. In terms of the data, will this inform data on Starship or other programs? Absolutely. Data is data, and we love it. We love data. We want to learn. We want to learn from everything we do and apply it wherever we can to be safer, to be more reliable, to be more efficient. And again, ultimately, be able to take lots and lots of people into space.
Thank you. And now we'll go back for some final closing comments from Steve Durzik. Steve?
Hey, thanks, Josh. So, I just want to reiterate that we had a very successful flight readiness review in that we did a thorough review of all the systems and all the risks, and it was unanimous on the board that we are go for launch. It is really exciting to be launching American astronauts on American rockets for American soil from Kennedy Space Center for the first time in 9 years. I know it's been a long, really challenging road, and I just cannot tell you how proud I am of the NASA SpaceX team for all their talent, hard work, dedication, and perseverance to get to this point of 5 days from launch. I could hardly, I am incredibly excited and can hardly believe it. We want you to join us, most of you virtually, unfortunately, given the situation, on Wednesday, March 27th at 4:33 p.m., when we're going to send Bob and Doug to the International Space Station and dock 19 hours later, and they will become part of the next ISS expedition. So with that, we'll conclude the press conference.
Good afternoon and welcome to our final Q&A with the crew members of the SpaceX Demo 2 flight test. Robert Behnken and Douglas Hurley arrived at Kennedy Space Center on Wednesday and are now less than 1 week away from becoming the first humans to launch to the space station from the United States since 2011. They're joining us from astronaut crew quarters, and we have just 25 minutes with them, so we'll let them make brief remarks and then take questions. Participants on the phone can press star 1 to let us know that you have a question, and those watching from home can send theirs in on social media using the hashtag AskNASA. But first, let's hear from the crew. Bob and Doug?
Hey, good afternoon from Kennedy Space Center and crew quarters. Just heard that everything went well with the FRR. We're excited to still be on the countdown. Hopefully we'll see the static fire here in a couple hours, and we're ready to take your questions.
All right. We are going to start off with Marina Korn from The Atlantic. Marina?
Time. Hi, Bob and Doug. Very excited for you. I'm wondering when you will see, for the last time before launch, your families. How will that be set up? Will they be wishing you well from a distance just to be safe?
We certainly will be wishing our families well from a distance. As folks know who've seen the shuttle history of walkouts, we'll be walking out of the astronaut crew quarters, making a stop in front of the Tesla that will take us to the launch pad. And that will be the point where we get a chance to really see our families for the final time prior to launch. So we'll give them a wave, and then we'll head around and climb in the car. And there might be a chance for them to get up close next to the window, but that'll be the last time that we see them before launch.
Next, we'll take a question from Joey Roulette with Reuters.
Cassidy wrote to you from the station about seeing you and Bob in the coming days. What else did he say in that email? Is he looking forward to you guys going on the station? And for Bob, I was wondering if you could tell us about how it felt to fly over to Kennedy Space Center. What did you guys talk about while you were on that flight? Thanks so much.
As far as the email from Chris, I probably would be doing him a disservice if I divulged everything he said in his email to us. But he is, I think, very much, and knowing Chris, as both Bob and I know him pretty well, he likes solitude, but it was very obvious that he is ready for some human interaction with us. As far as in the U.S. segment, obviously he's got his 2 Russian crewmates. But I think he's looking very much forward to us coming up there and at least trying to help him out some.
As far as our arrival goes, I think Doug and I were both extremely excited to return to the Kennedy Space Center and get a chance to fly around the facility a little bit. We didn't land immediately. There are always timing issues that people are trying to have as a consideration as you come in for an event like that. So we did get a chance to make a little bit of a tour of the local area rather than doing a full stop straight in, which allowed us to reminisce about all the times that Doug and I have flown in here, both as Cape Crusaders, but as astronauts over the years, and certainly dozens of times together coming to work at the Kennedy Space Center. It just was an exciting thing to go through one more time leading up to launch.
It was exciting to see. Next, we'll take Marcia Dunn from the Associated Press.
And if so, will that continue right up until launch day? And I'm also wondering if you've ever been so medically scrutinized in your entire lives.
The first